I'm gonna put you on mute for a minute.
No problem.
Oh yeah. Oh yep. Okay. So do my little intro here. This person is no stranger to my channel. Some of y'all might heard him on YouTube, but I'll let him introduce himself on that accord. Um, he's the author of a book titled "High School Students Unite: Teen Activism, Education Reform, and FBI Surveillance in Post-War America." And you have won the and this is Aaron G. Fountain, and it's nice seeing you again, Aaron. So how you doing?
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I'm doing well. I agree to do this because one, I've been on your channel before, but also when I think of folks who tune in into this sector of YouTube, they likely probably wouldn't know about this book. So it gives me a chance to discuss it with an audience that, in all reality, probably would have been very unfamiliar that this even came out,
Right.
and unfamiliar with this history as well. So no, I'm doing good. I mean, since I left YouTube, for everybody who knows, I'm formerly exposed to Manosphere, something I did in graduate school, but I think anybody who focuses on red pill manosphere content eventually gets burned out. So yeah, I stopped doing that. But every now and then I might just look at what I made and realize, like, yeah, I think it was a good thing that I stopped. I don't think I have that same level of energy, drive, and creativity as I did to focus on this. My energy is all focused on something else now.
Right. Um, I received your email. That's why you said you won a Los Angeles award
Oh,
for this
so the
book.
book is currently a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize for History. So five books throughout the entire calendar year of 2025 make the list. My book is one of them, and the winner will be announced at a ceremony in Los Angeles in April.
Oh, okay, okay. Um, yeah. Let me read the first thing because on the eighth page of acknowledgments, right?
Mhm.
And you said, although my father passed away after my first year of graduate school, I will always be grateful for his strictness, his understanding of the value of education, despite being a high school dropout, and his commitment to prioritize my sister and me in every decision he made. As I got older, I have become to understand how challenging it must be for him to be unable to work full time due to the violent mugging that left him disabled at just age at just 24 years old. Yet he worked tirelessly to give my sister and me a semblance of of a normal childhood. Um, and I want to know what lessons did he taught you? Um, I know you said that in his book. What lessons did like he taught you? Um, about what manhood and being a part of society a means for you.
Oh, yeah, that's a fair question. I will be honest; it was quite, oh, sorry, it was quite limited in that regard because I think one point in context I understand about my dad is that a few weeks or maybe a month or so before I was born, he was mugged in New York. Very frivolous crime. I think it was over like his clothes, and was shot twice in the head. But still, today he died. Had a bullet lodged in his head, so you can imagine the type of brain trauma that caused. But also because of that, he was placed on disability at the age of 24. So my entire childhood until like maybe I was about to graduate from high school, I never saw him work. He just stayed home all day.
Hmm.
So he was quite irritable, cantankerous, very verbally and physically abusive. But, you get older, you kind of want to look back on the past with clarity rather than bitterness. So when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, he didn't have a high school diploma because he dropped out, got a GED. However, I think he really strove. My uncle told me this that he loved us very much, but just didn't know how to show it. I think a lot of men struggle with that. So he was pretty strict on education. So when we went to school and came home, the first thing we had to do was our homework. And that was literally something, a disciplinary act I carried over even when I lived with my mother, who was much more unstable, and still did that when I returned to my dad's. Probably why I did pretty well in college. But I will say, when it comes to education, that was kind of it. He's very controlling. However, like I said, he didn't have a lot of life experience, so he was
Oh,
very
okay.
limited in terms of what I could learn from him. But you try to look at the positives. So I did think the strictness on schooling is what helped out the most because my older siblings, they didn't really have that in their lives.
Okay. Uh, so I'm gonna speak a little bit of the prologue of the book, and I'm gonna talk about the rest of the book later. So,
Okay.
so the prologue, you spoke highly of Steve Weiserman, the Polish American um, who is he, and how did he influence you in the making of this book? Because he's featured mainly in your prologue of this book.
Yeah, he's somebody I met when I was in undergrad and I did my second research project with the McNair Scholars Program. So I focused on high school students in the anti Vietnam War movement, looking at how students, teachers, and administrators reacted to the Vietnam War and protests against it. And when I was interviewing people, everybody's like, hey, you really need to talk to this guy, Steve Wasserman. So, the first person said, I'm like, okay. Then a second person said it, and maybe a third person. I'm like, okay, this guy must be a really big deal. So yeah, I did an interview with him, and when I was talking to him, it's kind of like talking to a book. He's very elegant, and throughout our conversation, I kind of realized that when it came to the book, I really wanted to highlight an individual whose trajectory as a high school student activist would have touched on every single theme that I talk about. So, for those who haven't read the book, Steve Wasserman is a descendant of Jewish Polish immigrants. So his grandfather immigrated to New York City, gave birth to his father, and then him in Oregon, and then in 1963, his family moved to Berkeley, California, and it's like propitious timing because it happens during the March on Washington. And from 63 to 70, he actually, as a high school kid, or junior high and high school kid, his life intersected with a lot of major national political developments. So he's there at the free speech movement. He's there at the first teachings that occur at the University of California at Berkeley. And he organized an anti-war rally in junior high school. And he also, along with another student, launched a student boycott for a Black Studies program. So Berkeley High School, Berkeley, California, is the first high school to have a Black Studies program for a high school. Quite a remarkable achievement. And then he's there. He goes to Chicago for the Chicago 7 trial. So yeah, that's why when I write it, I kind of highlight all these local and national events that happen to show how his life intersected from the perspective of a teenager. So yeah, that's kind of why I wrote it. I mean, I debated between him and another guy from New York City, but I wanted the person in New York City to be the heart of a chapter. So that's kind of why I went with that.
So wait a minute. Who was this other person that you was referring to?
Oh, who I might have, it would have been Bruce Trigg, who's in chapter 3 of the book and
Oh,
part of the New York
okay.
High School
Oh,
Student Union.
okay. So what led you to um to that book? I mean, what led you to wanting to write this book, and what's the goal of the book?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So what led me to write the book is that when I got to graduate school, I knew I wanted to expand upon the undergraduate research I did. And it would change over time. I mean, originally it was about the high school student activism in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I knew that this was a national and international phenomenon. So while my dissertation focused on the Bay Area, throughout grad school, I kept collecting records on high school student activism in other parts of the country, New York City, Chicago, Cleveland. I mean, you name it. And I would say the urgency to publish the book, I realized that the 50th anniversary of many historical student uprisings passed with very little acknowledgments. So I was
Hmm.
getting kind of concerned that this history was being quite forgotten. Not to mention the people I interviewed are in their 70s. So I knew that I'm kind of like on borrowed time. So I kind of wanted to, interview them, capture their stories, and publish this book so that they can actually read it. I kind of have to quote a guy, man, in Cleveland, like give people their flowers when they're around.
Hmm.
Sadly, of course, some people have passed away before the book came out. But the main goal of the goals of the book is really to show that high school student activism in the 1960s and 70s constituted a teenage-led education reform movement where teenagers' ideas about education, as I argue, serve as a significant ideological pillar in the history of school reform. And furthermore, their actions led to the modernization of school security embodied in police and school and FBI surveillance targeting teenagers.
Okay. On page 97,
Mhm.
you spoke of Paula Smith. She in the Chicago high school students against the war.
Yep.
Um, how did her? Is she still around or no?
I never found her. It's really hard to find people with two common first and last names, so I never
Uh
was
huh.
able to find her. But her story is actually captured in a book that came out in 1970 called "The High School Revolutionaries," where two educators went around the country to interview teenage activists, and she was one of them.
Okay, yeah. 'Cause the reason I asked because I was going to ask a question. How did her conservative upbringing in Indiana? I think it's Indiana. How did that? I was going really was going to ask how did it led her to be a liberal anti-war activist and her being
Oh
a
yeah.
and her being a lily white woman, white girl joining a what is the a pro black organization? I think
I
it was
know what you're talking about. It was like a
Waterley Hampton was with Waterley Hampton organization, something like that.
no, she there was like a some black student group at her school that she worked with, but she wasn't part of that group. I know what you're
Oh,
talking about.
okay, okay. I'm just.
No, she's not from Indiana. She's from Chicago. Her father or mother works in Indiana, but her
Oh, okay,
her
okay.
her understanding of the world comes through traveling. So she saw like racial segregation in the Jim Crow South, and she saw like impoverished Mexican Americans in the Southwest. So that made her start questioning the world. And eventually, she comes across a leaflet from the Chicago high school students against the war, joins them and gets politicized like in the process. But you see this a lot with this still happens today with like privileged white youth or people from like upper middle class white families that kind of accept the fact that most of the privilege that they have is just the accident of birth, and there's a lot of people who are quite disadvantaged, no fault to their own. So it kind of gives them this very strong social justice cause to try to make society more egalitarian.
Okay. I was going to ask another question, but since you can't find her,
Mhm.
um, on the because like I noticed your book is divided into read groups, but I'm gonna talk about that later on.
Mhm.
So when it comes to the Philadelphia Bill of Rights, and what can you tell about the origins of the Philadelphia Student Bill of Rights and in the race riot in Georgetown part of Philly, which led to the Philadelphia Bill of Rights, Students Bill of Rights.
Yeah, so chapter 7, I look at the High School Bill of Rights, where I argue how student rights were also like civil rights, since there was a common perception that student rights, like reforming dress codes and First Amendment rights, were like middle class white issues.
Hmm.
However, I show that while Black and Latino student protests, they actually asked for the same demands, but it had a more racial angle or racial analysis to it. And High School Bill of Rights is one of those things. And that comes about from the 1967 Black student walkouts that occurred in
Yeah.
downtown Philadelphia, which is actually a pretty well documented episode. There's actually a historical marker commemorating that. In fact, about 3 weeks ago, I met a student from Yale who was in high school, worked on it, getting that marker done. And I realized, like, I read that article, I realized that was the same person.
Yeah.
So, of course, yeah, the
Yeah.
students walk out. Oh, what?
Yeah, 'cause it says it was spearheaded by the Black People's Unity Movement, the BTUM. Is that?
Yeah, yeah. High teenagers often would work with adults. It's not like the adults are directing it; they're kind of like assisting the students.
Hmm.
And not to mention, this is like Black Power era, the era where student people are calling for community control of the neighborhoods of the schools. So it's like a Black student walkout to protest various like educational needs and reforms. And the police chief at the time, Frank Rizzo, allegedly says get their black asses and orders the police to attack the students. So you get this small riot in downtown Philadelphia. And out of that, and not to mention out of that, but also like protests that occurred afterwards and the police department stationing officers around quote unquote troubled schools, is that you get a interracial or multi-ethnic coalition of students demanding for a Bill of Rights, which they learned from students in New York cities. And this Bill of Rights largely would just make official school policy or make student rights official school policy. So it's like asking for like due process so that principals don't have the arbitrary decisions to suspend or expel a student. They want to ban corporal punishment for, and for some listeners, they might be shocked that it was more than permissible for an administrator or a faculty member to paddle a student or, open hand slap them in the face. And this was disproportionately used against boys, particularly minority boys. And also it addressed various issues actually, and it goes through a long negotiation pattern over this summer. And in the book, I talk about how this eventually comes to pass and the effort to preserve it, because just because it passed didn't mean that people wanted to dismantle it. So, but like a lot of high school Bill of Rights campaigns come out from student uprisings, and there's well over 1,000 that occur across the United States throughout the 60s and 70s.
If Frank Lizzo didn't he ran for mayor in
He became mayor.
1972? He became
Yeah, he
mayor.
became mayor. Yep.
Was it the late 70s, early
I think he was
80s?
still mayor in the 70s. Yeah. Yeah, it was in the
Okay,
70s.
okay, yeah, yeah. I kind of somewhat familiarized with the politics of Philadelphia.
Mhm.
Um, and let's see. And what? Yeah, yeah. Because a lot of black women, a lot of black girls were chased, and because on page 169 of your book, it says that vocational high school black students endure daily harassment
Mhm.
during their commute, which involved navigating 10 blocks of working class Italian neighborhood. They face verbal abuse, residents calling girls black bitches, and hurled trash at them as they walked to school. Some white residents, however, claimed they were the ones victimized. And how volatile was November 1967 up until May of '68? I think that's. I mean, yeah, yeah. I'm reading some of the excerpt of your book
Mhm.
of the violence that occurred between '67 and '71. It says here um, up to $200,000 was spent because of the grievance. Pers- um, was it grievance issues? And something else or something. I forgot.
I try to.
Yeah,
Are
yeah.
you
It
still
was, it
talking
was
about
a whole.
tablet
It was a
stuff?
whole list of things that happened
Uh-huh.
during that the late '60s and early '70s, and then you got the oh, I'll tell you to tell us about the slaying of Samson Friedman.
Oh yeah, the murder of Samson Friedman, an
Yeah,
educator. So
yeah.
yeah, it's a pretty tragic story. He's a ceramics teacher, a junior high school teacher, and one day a boy is having an argument with another boy, and he disciplines them, and he assumed, but the student assumes that the Okay, wait, I'm getting a little confused now. Hold on. So the teacher assumed that the student was talking about him, and he wasn't, so he gets disciplined. And this student who's quite bitter about what happened, this goes home and obtained his father's weapon, a gun that he had, to protect him from like mostly gang violence or other gangs in the neighborhood, and goes to school. Unbeknownst to people, hides the gun, and as the teacher exits the school, he follows him from behind and then shoots him in the back of the head, and Freeman dies. His school's closed for like a whole entire day to, send their condolences up to the teachers. Very tragic incident. But what happens is that murder gets tied to the high school Bill of Rights, where the teachers union argued that the Bill of Rights was promoting permissiveness in the schools, and it's unsuccessful because even the newspapers argue that it was just a gross politicization of something that was completely unrelated to a tragic incident. But it also gives you a sense what's going on in Philadelphia. It's a very racially polarized city. So I mean, the issue you talked about with students are walking through a working class Italian neighborhood. That's not just it. I mean, I give an example of a teacher at a high school who is complaining about the lack of parental involvement, and then says that the way to get black parents involved is to give them whiskey, and that led to a student protest at the school. But that wasn't uncommon for teachers to say very disparaging things about Black or Latino students or their parents.
Okay. In Cleveland, can like you speak on because like Cleveland first elected his first black mayor
Mm-hmm.
in 1968, or it was 69.
67.
67. Okay. Carl Stokes, right?
Carl
Um,
Stokes. Yeah.
yeah, Carl Stokes. I'm sorry. Um, can like you tell me about the violence of the Coltonwood High School riot?
Oh yeah. So for those that don't know, I lived in Cleveland.
Uh-huh.
Right before I finished grad school, I took a fellowship. Actually, I stated that when I was still working on a YouTube channel. Then I moved to Cleveland to serve as a lead historian for the Cleveland Civil Rights Trail, and that's when I first learned about the Collinwood riots. I went through a list of like suggested sites for historical markers. I saw Collinwood High School, 15 years of race riots. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty, that's pretty insane compared to other schools I focus on. Reality, it was 10 years, but even that still is an unprecedented amount of violence at a school. So Collinwood is a neighborhood that sits on the far northeastern side of Cleveland. Historically, it's largely been a lot of European ethnic groups, Italians, Slovenians, Irish. There's like some white Appalachian migrants who moved to the area, and there's a small black population. Well, what happens is that the historical black neighborhoods, well, not historical black neighborhoods that went through a racial transition like Glenwood become overcrowded. So as you expect, black families start to gradually move into the area. So the black population increase. Furthermore, during the civil rights movement, there are like some historic civil rights pickets to try to integrate the schools in Cleveland. So Cleveland had a very odd racial segregation policy. So black students were in schools that were so overcrowded that they literally bus students for half the day. So there'd be like a group of students who would go to school for 3.5 hours, then they'd be sent home. And then another group of students would go to school for the rest of the day. And that actually violated state law because at minimum, students were supposed to receive at least 5 hours of schooling, where these students were only getting about 3.5 hours. So, and civil rights activists noted that there were like empty schoolrooms in majority white neighborhoods, particularly on the west side. So they demand that the students get bused there. Now, of course, that's really, costly for a school district to do. However, there were empty schools on the east side of town. So I know Cleveland now is like east side, west side, but the east side at the time had a lot of white like neighborhoods. So the students then they do intact busing. So they actually go to these white schools. However, they're not allowed to interact with white students. Sometimes they need to ask for like permission to use the bathroom. So they're integrated, but they're still segregated. And there
Wow.
is this
Okay.
famous protest at Collinwood where they were protesting the construction of a school, and a white pastor unfortunately gets killed when he lays down in a ditch and a bulldozer accidentally rides over him. But there is actually like a small scale riot in that area. So you got the civil rights movement, and then you got like black families moving to the area. And because Collinwood is largely like a working class neighborhood with like white families that were on mortgages too burdensome to just pick up and move, they start to engage in violence against black residents. Now, if you go to Cleveland today, you'll find that many white residents don't remember the Collinwood riots, but black residents, however, do. even if they weren't alive at the time or lived in the area. So for a period of 10 years, there was an orchestrated effort among white residents to terrorize black students as a way to drive black families out of the area and to retain the white hegemony that had previously existed in the neighborhood. Now, how did this look like? Well, normally you have secret community meetings and you'll get 700 to 800 people crowded outside the school. And as black students arrived, it would physically beat them up. You get some really terroristic activities like a car that had tinted windows and would point a rifle out the window and point them at black students as they left the junior high school. And black students who walked to school would get beat up, and the people who beat them up wasn't just students, also like adults in their 50s. I saw a news report of a man who was in his mid 50s that got arrested for throwing a brick at a 12-year-old kid. In the book, I go on how this happens for like 10 years until it eventually just fizzle out when the black population grows much larger, and it doesn't make much logical sense for white residents to keep engaging in that campaign. So it's not a happy story, and it was hard to get people to talk to me. I got in contact with one guy. He contacted his friend. Is like, is this guy serious? And a friend agreed to interview me, but it was kind of pointless because he played football, so he didn't remember much of the violence. So I'm like, well, of course, you played football. You probably were like the exception.
Right.
So yeah, that's that chapter though. So it was the hardest chapter to write.
Well, have you because how did it affect? Because you only mentioned Carl Stokes, the mayor.
Carl
It's
Stokes,
not
yeah,
Stokes. This is Strokes or Strokes?
Stokes, Stokes.
Stokes. Okay. Um, how did how did it affect his administration as mayor, since he was the first black mayor during the time? And have you reached out to his family, um, or his children who was present during that time period?
I interviewed his son and his niece. So I will say, as the mayor of Cleveland, he didn't really have any power over the school district. However, he's in the beginning of the chapter because when
Oh, oh,
350 white people stormed the building to attack the black students that were in the building, um, he just realized this was too severe to ignore, and he's the one who actually asked the governor to send in the National Guard. And they do come, but they're stationed in like two adjacent suburbs, so they're kind of more so on standby. However, that was like the third time within a 4-year period that a sitting mayor of Cleveland called in the National Guard to handle some sort of uprising. So, but because he's mayor, he's not so much in the story, and his family, he lives in the Larchmere area. It's a neighborhood on like the more so somewhat southeastern part of Cleveland. It borders Shaker Heights. Shaker Heights at this time is like the top 5 best school district in the nation. So
uh-huh.
his family doesn't even live in the area, and because it deals with the school, it doesn't really come up a whole lot. But when I went to the archives, I seen a lot of people complain about it. They were just like, something over time they would kind of throw up their hands like, oh, that's just the way it is. Like, I don't know what's going on. But privately, they would say like, hey, can we please try to fix this issue? Like, what's going on? But nothing really seemed to work. So they were concerned about it, but they didn't really publicly always say something.
Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the book. Now I'm going to talk about the surveillance part
Oh
um
yeah, yeah, yeah.
of the book. But like, in your book though, right? It only divides up to 3 sections with 3 themes:
Mhm.
politics, race, and surveillance. Um, how come issues like feminism, classism, and religious uh liberty are not heavily mentioned in this book?
Good
Are you
question. So
right? Yeah.
yeah, when one of the issues of writing a book is that you can't include everything, and I didn't
Hmm.
learn this until I was publishing a book that long books are not actually a good thing because one, people don't finish them, but two, it makes the book cost more. So I had to realize, like, okay, what themes I'm going to focus on, and I will say I am, I'm probably biased. Like, every author is biased. I'm sure if I was like a woman,
Right.
I definitely have much more focus on feminism. I was mostly, but my goal in the book was to demonstrate to people that high school student activism constituted a social movement, and the two movements that largely contribute to that are civil rights and the anti-war movement. And what kind of unites the high school movement is like the underground newspapers. So that's mainly why I focus on that. I would say definitely school violence is probably like the only subject in the book that's not a clear fit in terms of what I'm trying to write about. But however, this is a subject I wrote this book with the hopes that people would write more about it. So I do want to see more studies on feminism, like gay liberation. I didn't think about classism, even though I do talk about class because talking about students, they're much more reflective of like college
Right.
campuses. Because people ask why high schools, I'm like, well, it's mandatory, it's more diverse, and you're talking about people who range across the social economic spectrum, unlike college campuses at the time, which were 95% white.
Well, okay. I'm glad that you said that because my second question was, are you going to mention it in a future book about the other stuff that? But you already answered it then for me. So it leads me to another thing, right? Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, with the Ken State shooting,
Mhm.
and the people like well, I mean, I'm gonna use MLK, Martin Luther King were mentioned less than seven times in this book.
Mhm.
Um, how much influence their movements, or the men who led these movements, influenced the high school level protest? How much influence did Malcolm X, um, Martin Luther King, and I want to say what's his name who got killed in Chicago, Hampton.
Fred Hampton.
Yeah, Fred Hampton. Yeah, how much
Mhm.
did they influence the high school students protesting and being in an anti-war civil rights movement of the '60s and '70s?
Oh, I mean, quite a bit. They're part of that whole national, how people policies become much more a part of popular culture. So, I said the whole high school movement comes out of the civil rights movement. So, their teenagers have been, protesting for civil rights since the 1920s. I mean, there's a rich history of Black student activism in the South going back to the 1920s. I mean, you think of like the Birmingham Children Crusade, the Selma protest. There's teenagers there, and so actually, I learned in Greenville, North Carolina, during the sit-in movements during the summer, it was the high school students who actually continued the sit-in movement when the college students actually went home for summer break. So that's one with the civil rights movement. Malcolm X, certainly, actually, the cover of my book, the picture that's on the very top with the student who's holding a microphone, that's
Yes.
Donald Reeves, who in 1972 published a book called Notes of a Processed Brother. He attributes his reading of the autobiography of Malcolm X as his politicization. And there definitely were attempts among Black students to have the autobiography be taught in schools. And Fred Hampton, I mean, he's a local person. However, his death is reported throughout the high school underground press across the United States. So, high
Uh,
school student activism is definitely embedded in Black liberation, regardless of whether it was like Black or white students. They always realize that we have to be for civil rights and Black liberation if we're going to demand true societal reform.
right. I'm putting up the cover of the book.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, on the overlay, you talking about the brother who got with the
Microphone.
microphone and the glasses on?
Yep.
Okay. So like he was part of Malcolm X's, or he was influenced by Malcolm X, and he
Hmm.
wanted the autobiography of Malcolm X to be curriculum.
Oh no, I said that's other students. I said he was
No,
politicized by the
oh, okay. Oh,
autobiography. He's
okay.
a leader in
Okay.
the
I'm
high
sorry.
school movement in New York City.
Okay. All right. Let me see. There's something else. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Let me get back to the last part of the book about the surveillance. How much money was spent by the FBI and the intelligence agencies like the CIA as well, infiltrating and demolishing these movements?
Oh
Um,
yeah, I don't know the cost, but I know one scholar, Greg Mitchell, in spying on students, said it was actually a waste of resources because in most circumstances, they never found the conspiracy that they were looking for. These were really just nothing but a waste of time. But in the book, I call them great archivists because they save a lot of the documents that these radical groups were publishing that don't exist in archives. So that's one benefit. But I don't know exactly how much it cost, but I know it wasn't a good use of government funds.
okay. Uh, so people like J. Edgar Hoover at the time was not really involved. Was any of the parents of those students were they targeted by these surveillance agencies. Um,
Yes, many people I interviewed, their parents had FBI files because they were involved in like the Communist Party or civil rights and anti-Vietnam War activism. And interviewing these people, they actually would tell me that my parent was like surveilled by the FBI. And one guy had a funny joke where they knew their phones were tapped, so they would just pick up the phone, be like, "Hello, J. Edgar Hoover, have F's alligators." They would just constantly say that. So yeah, because many of the students, their parents are on the left and are quite politically active in various social causes. So, yep, they did definitely solicited FBI surveillance and police surveillance.
okay, what about like principals like principal? I can't pronounce his name. I think he has like he has like a
Michaelak?
Czechoslovakian. Makalak, yes,
Yeah.
Makalak from a no, Custer High School in Milwaukee.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
what was his role in being a troublemaker in your book? What was his role in uh, what was he trying to destroy the movements, or was he trying to be a part of it? Because
Oh.
um,
So no, he's like mini school administrator. So in the book in chapter 9, I look at school administrators in the FBI and I call it troublemakers because that's how school administrators view student activists. So when
uh-huh.
I say administrators, I'm talking about secretaries, security officers, assistant and vice principals, principals, school board members, and district level administrators. Not so much teachers, even though I have an example of like 2 teachers, but teachers are more likely to be surveilled than to engage in surveillance. So R.F. Michaelak, like many school principals, confiscated political materials that students circulated and would forward them to the local FBI office. The school administrators don't really write letters or make phone calls to explain their actions. However, he's not the only person in Milwaukee that do that. Like several principals and school board members in Milwaukee are, forwarding things to the FBI and having secret meetings with the local police department to strategize ways to undermine high school student activism to make sure that it doesn't spread to other cities in Milwaukee. So Michaelak is, like many administrators across the United States, is engaging with the FBI in a way to try to solve this alleged conspiracy that outside agitators might be involved, and yes, to undermine students' political activities.
Yeah, and what about the heavy part of the Chicano, the Hispanic community role in the student protest? Can you talk more about that as well?
Oh yeah, I mean, getting in the late 1960s, Chicano, Mexican American students or Chicano students throughout the Southwest, but also the Midwest too, would organize student walkouts and boycotts to protest, racist school teachers and Eurocentric curriculum, and to demand that more diverse, teachers be hired, as well as to protest the low standards that teachers had. If you ever read the book called Blowout, written by Mario Chavez and Cel Castro, so Cel Castro was a teacher in East Los Angeles. And he talks about when he got hired there, like a lot of his white co-workers viewed Mexican American students as kids who would just get pregnant and drop out of high school. That's
Hmm.
literally how they saw them, or they just saw them as good for manual labor, but not for like college track. But this is not just East LA. You see this throughout, like predominantly Mexican schools. And not to mention, in many Mexican schools, you could be paddled for speaking Spanish. So in the late 1960s, it's actually Chicano high school students that literally give birth and energy to the Chicano movement. It starts in East LA, where you get like 10 to 25,000 students for a full week who walk out of high school to protest the conditions of their schools in East Los Angeles. And then that actually inspires students in Texas. So, like in South Texas, there's like 39, I think, student walkouts that were inspired by the protests that occurred in East Los Angeles. And in the book,
Right.
I talk about a.
I believe though, because you're talking about the Texas thing, right? I
Mhm.
think that gave rise to the La Raza movement of the
Oh, I'm
1970s.
sure. Yeah, it's
Um,
teenagers leading that way, the Chicano
yeah,
teenagers that are aspiring
yeah,
adults.
yeah. Because down here, because there is a strong. If you go to South Texas, right, where there's not that many black people down here,
Yeah.
so we have this strong Hispanic um La Raza movement. La Raza still exists.
Mhm.
If you go to places like South Texas, like San Antonio is a good area. where you find them, and then you go to areas like Corpus. You go to areas like anywhere, in the Rio Grande Valley area. The La Raza is still strong.
Mm,
Um, they're really affected in the Democratic Party in Texas, because you have
mhm,
this, it's weird, because right, I don't know, if you looking at the Jasmine Crockett versus James Tallarico primary race down here, right?
mhm,
um they're hedging bets, right? They're trying to, because there's no Hispanic candidate on the Texas Senate ballot.
mhm,
They're trying to hitch their wagons to Tallarico, because like they see Black Americans as a Black Texans as a uh they kind of view us as in the way. We're just in the way because they trying to get after the white Anglo conservatives.
mhm.
It's kind of like a three-way war. If you look in the game and you look in it in a more in the politics era, I mean, if you feel it's just three sides battling each other for control. We, as Black people, African Americans, where you want to call us, we're kind of in their way, supposedly. That's how they kind of view us. We kind of in their way. So I see what they're trying to do with Talrico versus Jasmine Crockett. Um, and It's a very interesting things that's happening down here in the state of Texas, though, concerning that. Um, Here's another thing. I mean, let me go to the last part of the book. Because you said something, because you trying to lend it to today, and you talk about your own high school.
Oh, yep, yep,
Um,
yep.
let me see, where is it? At page 269, I believe. I hope I got it. Um, you said, I'm personally convinced that the interview. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, no, no. Let me read down. Um, you kind of talked about at your high school where your hey man, you know what? I messed
Was
that
it?
up,
Think
y'all.
it was Faro High School or
I,
which one?
I messed that up, y'all. I put the bookmark at the wrong place. Well, anyway, okay. Well, let me do this real quick. Let me do this, because you talk about in one high school,
Mhm.
um, you was turned down by a committee from attaining some resource
Wait,
research.
I was turned down. Trying to think what you're talking about.
On page 269.
Okay, I have the book in front of me, so.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. You're trying to write to staff to attain something.
Oh, yeah, that's when I tried to donate a copy of an underground newspaper published in Bloomington, Indiana. And the staffer was interested, but the board said no. And that wasn't the first time. I tried to do the same thing with a digital repository to submit a high school underground newspaper from New York City, and they just turned it down. And I was always just a little puzzled by that. Well, what's with this material that people generally don't want? But however, archives are quite political. They don't collect everything. Is still a decision to make whether something should be preserved or not. So it's not as objective as people might think.
But do you find it weird that they would deny you um access to like the archives?
No, because my when I was in grad school, I learned that my friends who study like Latin American history or Asian history, they encounter way more resistance in archives than I ever have. Because when you write a book about challenging national myths or I don't know, some things that they value. Like an author, she wrote a book about sexual relationships between white colonial officials and Indian women during the British Raj, and that makes people feel very uncomfortable. And they just might tell you like, "Oh, that would have never happened here," and they just might see you as somebody who has like an agenda. So no, that doesn't shock me at all. But places, countries, and cities,
Hmm.
they often want to be portrayed positively. So it is a reason why Collinwood, that chapter I wrote, that's the first comprehensive account on those riots. There was nothing comprehensive written about it before this book came out.
Okay, okay. And let me go back because I'm trying to find where I left the um because I lost where I was going to, because I was going to talk about issues like Parkland. Yeah, yeah, here it is. Because you said
Mhm.
in okay, it's 268, not 269, right? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Um, because you said you mentioned something about Parkland, and then you said that you had personal interest in the walkout, remembering the district for issues that had worsened since I last attended 2020 2005 as a freshman.
Yep.
Um, can you expound on the era of Columbine? Because like now I was in high school when Columbine first started, right? And the anti-gun pro protests. I guess people after 9/11 there was a anti-gun pro protest walkouts. Um, when you was in high school, because I was gone before 9/11. I was gone around
Hmm.
2000 2001.
Okay.
So how was your experience in high school concerning the protests like Parkland, all these other protests as a result of the school massacres and stuff? How was your experience was
Huh.
during that
That's
during that
interesting.
time period?
I went to high school in the late 2000s, so there wasn't a lot of like national protests fomenting from high schools. Of course, I mean school shootings were a concern. We had to do those. If people here were old enough to remember, you had to do those like lockdown drills where you
Hmm.
literally, yeah, you go into like the locker, or if your school had a locker, we went into our lockers, and you had to. You had to practice what would happen if there was like an active school shooter. Interestingly, there was an actual lockdown at my school because a student brought a gun there. However, it wasn't armed. It wasn't loaded, but we didn't know that. So that's like the only true experience we had. But I do remember those, and I don't remember thinking about them critically, but you knew that was a reality. I mean, I did go to a majority minority school, so the joke was like you associate that with like predominantly white schools. You didn't really think like a predominantly black or Latino school, someone's going to come in and indiscriminately shoot up people. They might shoot somebody who they have a problem with, but not a whole lot of random people. So I didn't really see that, but going to 8 high schools in 3 different states, I learned through lived experience way before I was like knowledgeable in terms of reading that race and social economic status shape the quality of education that people receive. I think if I was more politically conscious, I would have definitely organized. But however, you can't really do that if you're moving around quite frequently as I did.
Okay, because I remember me and you had this discussion. Was like 2 years ago when Kevin Samuels died,
Mhm.
and you mentioned that. Oh, wait a minute, you mentioned on your channel, I think, when you referred about that you was raised in a Padorn in a Puerto Rican community.
Mhm.
How did that shape your outlook concerning this topic about protests and how you view um African American society?
Oh yeah, I don't think it didn't really shape my view how I viewed protests. But when I used to write about the manosphere, and this is true, this is not just the manosphere. You see this a lot in black culture. Black people be like, "Oh, we're the only group to blah blah blah," or like, "We're the only group that thinks blah blah blah." And
Right.
I'm like, I lived in very diverse communities. I'm like, guys, a lot of the stuff people complain about is more class based than race or ethnic based. So yeah, I've seen, growing up in a public housing project that was predominantly Puerto Rican, there's a lot of single mother headed households, and you see like dysfunctional households. But, it's weird when you grow up in poverty, you kind of normalize dysfunction. So nobody at school is going to talk about, well, what they're going through. One, it'd be quite embarrassing. But two, you might just get dismissed like, yeah, yeah, everybody has, something. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm pretty. When I look back at the people I went to school with at 34, I did realize, like, oh, a lot of my classmates came from very unstable homes. I'm sure many of them came from, homes that couldn't provide them adequate clothing. Because I know there would be students that would come with like bad body odor or wearing like the same clothes days in a row. Or I'm pretty sure some of the girls were like like sexually assaulted at a very young age, and the boys too. But you get older, you move away from that. You do realize like that's not normal. So that's what really shaped my worldview. That it's not uniquely a black thing; it's more just a class thing.
Like me, you have the similar because I'm raised in a more predominant white area, more
Hmm.
diverse, and I do get annoyed, right? I do get annoyed when I hear it's we're the only people that do X, Y, and Z, and I can go look outside and see, you know, the worst of the worst, and they mainly are poor whites, right? Or they're or
Hmm.
upper class whites. I am annoyed by every time I go on YouTube and on social media and that talking point. We're the only group of people to do this. We're the only group of people. It's very annoying. So yeah, that's why I I recoil at some of the um some of the statements being said. Now though there's a race issue, of course, and it's not it's racism and there's classism. I think the race part is more about um we're not treated based upon 500 years of us being here, and the images that's being that we're bombarded certain images and how we are portrayed either in our own communities or in pop culture and in politics. I think that's where the racism is at. But I do agree with you on the classism part as well. Um, but it's more how can I say it um, it's more there are nuances in this. I'm saying there's nuances
Hmm.
what's going on. So yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna ask you something though. How long did it took you to write this book? Because it's a lot of
Oh,
you got information in here, but yet it's still it's what less than 300 pages.
oh, yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
you.
yeah, your standard 300-page book. So I'm just wondering, and you have a lot of information in it. And yes, you did a lot of. If you go into the index, right? You go in the index, yeah, you got a lot of information. That the list of independent school or organizations and how how many years did it took you to compile all the information?
Oh, so I mean, the genesis of this is from 2012. I would say, as it is now, this started in, this is like 11 to 13 years of research. To write it, well, it comes from a dissertation. So, large parts of it's already written. But I finished in August 2022, took a little break. I would say, as it is now, that was probably like 2 years to finish the book. It was a sacrifice of time. It was really going to the libraries after work when I lived in Cleveland, DC, to keep working on it. But like I said, I made sure I had to get this done. So the list in the back of the book, they talk about the over 500 independent student organizations and the names of over 1,000 high school underground newspapers. That was 10
Hmm.
years. And when I first started making that list, I never had the intention to put it in a book. It was something I did initially out of curiosity. Then I did it to help me with the FBI FOIA request. And as it grew, I'm like, oh, I should put this in a book because I'm writing about the Bay Area, and it's likely somebody will write about New York City, Chicago. But what's the chances that somebody's going to write about Nebraska or like some mid-sized or small city or rural area? So it was my chance to try to show people that this was truly a national phenomenon, which I was one of the main goals too, because focused on the Bay Area, I would always get the, oh yeah, of course that can happen in the Bay Area, but it never would happen where I grew up. So I'm like, no, this was truly a phenomenon that occurred in urban, suburban, and rural areas, and also internationally as well. So you write a book, it's very time consuming, and it takes years, especially a research based book, and you can't include everything. So yeah, if I
Right.
wanted to try to include everything I knew, this probably would have been like three times the size.
Hey, and here's one thing I forgot to add. Uh, is the draft, right? How many
Oh, yeah.
students was drafted straight out of high school during Vietnam?
I don't know the numbers on that. I didn't know high school students come quite concerned. Now, you could be drafted from 18 to 20 something, but in 1967, President Johnson places 19-year-olds at the top of the draft list, and that makes high school students increasingly concerned. I should say, when it comes to Vietnam, the Vietnam War, most teenagers in the beginning supported the war. Their attitudes about the war reflected that of the American majority. I mean, there's nuances. I've seen a poll from a school in California where I found out although most students supported the war, most of them didn't want to fight in it.
Right.
So, but over time, the high school opposition to the war would grow, and the draft is definitely a part of that. But I think I should say the anti-Vietnam War movement is very misunderstood. I think most Americans view it as like an emotional reaction and not one that had various groups and different ideological disputes and schisms and shifting strategies. And high school students were definitely embedded in all of that. So yes, they are concerned about the draft, but they also are, they're morally opposed. They might be ideologically opposed, especially they identify as like Maoists or Trotskyists. They supported like anti-colonial struggles. So it's far more nuanced than I think in our contemporary lens think about when it comes to the anti-war movement.
All right. So one of my co-hosts, she asked a question in the chat room. What is your field of study? Because
Oh yeah, U.S. history.
she's not familiar. She's not familiar with you. So what's your
Oh
field of
yeah,
study?
I have a PhD in U.S. history, focusing on 20th century social and political history. So I'm pretty broad. I like to joke that I'm a generalist because I was recently in Harlem. I got invited by the Schomburg Center to participate on a panel, and I remember after the discussion, somebody came up to me like, "Oh, so you write about everybody?" I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much."
All right. And she also asked, let me see, because you mentioned your father, um,
Mhm.
and it's a delicate question. How was during the upbringing and the aftermath? Um, how did you feel about um after his the death? I mean I don't know if if I asked it earlier. If
Oh no, you
not,
didn't ask, but I can answer it though. It's
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
was,
yeah.
it's still your parent at the end of the day, regardless of relationship you have with them. So yes, I was sad. I even cried a bit. I didn't remember a lot of stuff I experienced as a kid because your brain has a tendency to protect you from trauma. So I had a lot of repressed memories that only came back probably like a year ago. So some of it I
Mhm.
remembered, some of it I had completely forgot. I didn't notice it until I read a journal I wrote like to myself 15 or 16 years ago. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So no, I was still sad because you only get one, you only get one father. So
Right, right. And going back to the book, I'm trying to remember. You mentioned the now. I know you didn't mention it. You only mentioned Parkland, I believe. Seeing that the rise of Trumpism,
mhm.
MAGA, and you seen people walking out, the anti-ICE. There about a couple weeks ago, there was a school in Atlanta, the Georgia area. I think it's around the Atlanta. They're doing walkouts.
Mhm.
What are the student walkouts in the Trump era? And I say era, I'm gonna say the last 10 years, from 2015 up till today. Um, how do they compare walkouts to the 60s and 70s?
Oh, how do they compare? I would say
Yeah.
the current walkouts are kind of more like solidarity protests. Although I should say, students been walking out for like a year. When I was in Montgomery County, Maryland, there was like a student walkout at a high school about a mile away from where I live, and they walked out to protest the deportation of a classmate. Um, and I will say now the biggest difference are the issues. So the largest walkouts have been over like school shootings and ICE, but high school student activism is still hyper local. So students are still protesting like the dismissal of like a popular teacher or like Black Lives Matter protests or budget cuts or whatnot. In the the main difference between now and then is that student walkouts in the 60s or 70s were much more frequent, and they tended to overlap with issues regarding race. So, like the students would walk out over like racist teachers and Eurocentric curriculum, or the placement of police officers in schools, or the closures or threats of closure of schools, or the firing of like a popular teacher, or police violence, or like student on student violence. So the issues were much more, they overlap, but they were much more contentious than today. Not to say ICE is definitely contentious, and some of the backlash to it has been. Although this has only been going on for a year, whereas like the student walkouts in the 60s, they continuously went on for at least like 4 years, from 68 to 72, where you had citywide walkouts. And to my understanding, I don't think any walkout has been like truly citywide. They've all mostly been like just one school, or maybe like a few schools.
And do you believe that these walkouts now, do you think they're more effective, or now with social media versus the old days of just the word of mouth back then?
No, and I say that because when I was on an NPR station, a guy I interviewed in my second book, who grew up in Canada, told me that I said at first, like, "Oh, social media makes it easier." He's like, "No, you still got to get out in the streets and talk to people face to face." So, what social media allows people to do is to connect with each other much more quickly. But at the end of the day, you still got to get people out in the street, so you still have to like meet them face to face and persuade them to like come. So no, that type of organizing, that's always going to be there. So I can't say today is more effective. They can just organize nationally much quicker. Like one thing I was so impressed by the March for Our Lives protest back in 2018 was the fact that they organized a national rally in a month. Where you could not do anything like that in the 60s. That would have been months of planning. It probably take like a
Right,
year to
right,
actually do.
right. We call all the logistics, and you have to
Mhm.
get people in the right positions, and you have to filter, all that. You have to filter the people who are more problematic or so out the way. Yeah, you got to do all that. So yeah, also you have to I think now it's more. I think now with the what's his name, who came the Democratic chair, the vice chair from Parkland. I
Oh,
think
David Hogg.
yeah, David Hogg, right? I think now the difference now, you got people like David Hogg. What's that young guy who's now on CNN? He has a YouTube channel called what's it called? I can't think off the top of my head. The minus what minus
The Midas
touch.
touch.
Yeah, I
Does he wear a
I,
hat?
when I
The guy
saw him
that
on
wears a hat a
CNN,
lot.
mm, there's about what, a handful of men, guys who
Wear a
who who
Texas hat though.
got.
He has like a Texas style hat.
No, 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 no.
Oh, okay,
But
not him.
well, it may not be him, but he's bareheaded when he's on Phillips Child going after what's his name, that white guy, the anyway. I think now though, the student protest movement of
Mhm.
today, I think the leadership is well known because they're elevated through social media, and then they're jettisoned onto the CNNs of the world, MSNBCs of the
You're
world.
you're right about that. I think now, as Ezra Klein calls like the attention economy, now it's much more easier for like ordinary people to gain some type of publicity. My main concern though with that is that when those people do get to appear on those platforms like CNN, or even Fox News if you're on the right, is that I don't think people realize how much money they make from that. They get paid a good boatload of money to make those appearances, and then it makes me wonder, like, okay, how much of this is sincere activism versus like, well, yeah, I'm concerned, but I'm also getting paid very well because activists in the
You're,
'60s
you're, you're,
didn't get
you're like
paid.
grifting.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
if you look
like
at like
yeah,
the
like
yeah, I'll say if you look at the Black Panther Party, a lot of those former members, like some of them are still struggling till this day. I mean, being an activist doesn't come with a retirement plan, and law enforcement
right.
still harass them like 50 years later.
Yeah, kind of like the app. What's that group out there in Florida? During 2024, the FBI came out there and raided them. What's it called? It's a black. revolutionary group in Florida. I'm
Hmm.
trying to remember the name.
I can't recall exactly, but
I forgot the name now. The Black Unity Party or something like that. Yeah, they
I'm not
raided him.
familiar.
It was headquartered in Florida, and this guy, he was one of the revolutionaries,
Hmm.
protesters from the. He was part. He used to be part of the Black Panther Party
Hmm.
uh, at one point, and yeah, they raided him in 2024. And I was, and you're right though. They are still harassing the old, the old G leadership at the time, or those who were members
Hmm.
at the time. So yes, so you are right about that. Um, and this also, you know, since we're talking about high school students, right, and college,
Hmm.
and a little bit of college students, what about the Turning Point USA and this entity we call Charlie Kirk, and how Charlie Kirk is, or his movement is infiltrating high schools? Like in my home state of Texas, they're trying to create a law where every school district must have a chapter of Turning Point.
Hmm.
So what is your opinion after the death of Charlie Kirk, and what's going on in the whatever's going on with Turning Point USA, and what's his name? What's that old guy who keep um pumping up pumping money to Turning Point USA? What's his name? The white guy. What's his name?
Tucker Carlson or
Um what's that channel called? Um he went out to Keith Ellison at the time. He
mhm.
went to Keith
I
Ellison. I forgot his name. But
it's
anyway,
okay.
it's
I
not.
can't remember.
Yeah. You like. I know his face, but I can't get the name. Because
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of. I do want to answer the question though, because
yeah,
it's,
go
it's
ahead.
something
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
if a group of students want to organize a chapter of Turning Point USA, I say so be it. What I don't understand is the fact that government, local, state government officials would back that, because normally, when I look at the '60s, the biggest controversy with establishing student organizations was the fact that schools felt that they could not support partisan organizations. Now, they certainly had young Democrats and young Republicans, but those are official parties. So
Hmm.
but it's also just point to the hypocrisy of student activism that's always been there. That when it comes to conservative activism, it has always been much more supported by people in power. But when it comes to left wing activism, it's always viewed as suspicious. So even in the '60s and '70s, when conservative students got together, they were almost rarely, I haven't seen one instance of them being accused of being manipulated by outside agitators, whether they were like supporting the war or opposing like civil rights. But when black students organized for civil rights or against the war, I mean, or students in general, they were always accused of being like indoctrinated by some outside agitators.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because now though the narrative is we're influenced by China, or that's the thank you, George. Dennis Prager's who I'm talking about.
Oh,
From
Plague,
PragerU. Yeah,
yeah,
PragerU.
that's
Yeah,
why I know. Oh, okay.
yeah. PragerU. You ever watch watch their channels, and you be like their videos, you be like, that's entirely inaccurate with the
Yeah, I've seen a
information.
few, and
Especially,
that's why I don't
yeah,
watch it though.
yeah. Especially when Dennis Prager talks about black people.
Mhm.
It's like you don't even know. He purposely leaves out information out. And talking about, oh
Mhm.
yeah, it was so good when Frederick Douglass was around, and narrative, right? So yeah, that's who I was referring to. Dennis Prager and him creating Charlie Kirk. That's who really was the foundation. Charlie Kirk's rise was
Oh,
Dennis
okay. So
Prager.
I didn't
Yeah.
follow Kirk. I would just see him on my social media feed. I didn't follow him, but he would just pop up sometime, and I would just ignore his
Hmm.
posts. So I thought like the death is tragic. Anytime a human being dies is tragic. I did think the response to it, pretty much, I think they exacerbated his legacy. Like I think most Americans never heard of him, because after he passed away, you would have thought he was like on the level of like a Martin Luther King or something. I'm like, I don't think he was that famous. I know why he's significant, because he organized a youth vote for Trump in 2024. But I always think like 10 years down the line, I don't know what I put him on the same level of like a William Buckley or Pat Buchanan when it comes to the history of American conservatism.
Hmm. Because I think that conservatism, as an ideology, I think is lost its how can I say it? It lost its strength. Um,
Well, this a professor of mine would always say you can only cut taxes so many times before you kind of run out of ideas. I think conservatism now is going through a total revamp. I mean, funny thing about liberalism and conservatism, like on the left is just as ideologically diverse as the right is, but the right has a better history of coalescing around a candidate. Because I mean, on
hmm
the right, you get people who are they're much more concerned about like business and taxes, and then you get the people who are more like one issue voters who just care about like abortion or they're driven more by religion. And the Trump coalition is so diverse because you do get the people who like him because of his tax policies, but then you get people who like him because of like one single issue where they believe that he's restoring like masculinity back. So it's also these economic, ideological, and sometimes these really obscure like gendered reasons as to why people support the it or in the MAGA base at least.
but do you think that MAGA is because of your content and my content, right? Do you believe that MAGA is because you and I are historians? Do you believe that um, the surplus male, right? Men who men who have problems with women, men who feel left out. Do you think that MAGA is another vehicle similar to um, Franco's when Franco's Spain um, or the French Revolution of the 18 of the 18th century, where men are so disenchanted that they will opt um for demagogues and dictators.
I don't think it's that sophisticated.
Oh,
I
you
know what you
don't?
mean.
Okay.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, I do think that Trump at least appeals to men who quote unquote don't feel like men. In fact, I think it was like PBS NewsHour, the New York Times. They interviewed young men who supported Trump, and they didn't really complain about women, but they were definitely concerned about their status as men. The fact that they were not gainfully employed, or maybe they were employed but didn't make as much as they thought they would, because our understanding of like manhood and gender is changing, but historically gender has always changed. Like I mean, now in many major cities, women make as much, if not more, than men do. So some men in those, major cities or metropolitan areas might feel a little insecure. Many men do feel insecure if they date a woman that makes more money than them. And I think sometimes women have a hard time accepting that the gender roles are changing as well. And that, yeah, your mother or grandmother might have valued a man who was financially stable and had a good paying job. But now you might be in a predicament where the man's going to make the same as you or less than you. So I think both sides are struggling with this change in gender norms that we're experiencing.
Okay. Okay. Let me see what else. Um. So somebody in the chat room, one of our mutual ops asked a question. Are you seeing body?
That's
I don't know
personal.
why.
I don't know why.
I know. I have to ask because he's up in my chat room. Are you married or do you got a girlfriend?
No, I know who you're
like
talking
you,
about. It's
yeah,
funny because when I used to do the whole expose the manosphere stuff, I never understood why people expected me to share personal information with a bunch of strangers. I mean, and
right.
then make me feel bad about it. I'm like, I don't know who you are. I'll never see you. It's a little bizarre to ask me that. I think I should care.
I find it odd that a grown man going to ask another grown man, "Are you seeing anybody?" I find that weird. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I
Why
think some
why
people
you?
are still stuck in immaturity. When I used to do this channel, I was always shocked how high schoolish the manosphere was, even though it's like mostly men in their 30s and 40s who are content creators. So
Hmm.
it doesn't really bother me. I just kind of laugh at it now because I'm like, I don't.
Uh,
It serves me no purpose to reveal that type of information.
yeah, I had to ask because it was funny. He just want me to ask that question. I'm like, I'm not asking this man his personal business. Why should I ask him, another grown man, what his personal business? This ain't no gossip channel. How you doing today? This ain't the View. This
Hmm.
ain't no Barbara Walters special to do some interviews. No, I don't do it like that. I'm talking about policy. Don't thing I care about is policy and how things work. Oh, let me ask you something. Since we hadn't
Hmm.
spoke by voice, because speaking about because I remember you told me this. I think it was on Twitter, or was it by email? You asked me what's going on because you talking about the passport bros.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, that's yeah, it's weird. It looked like there's a RICO charge on many of the passport bros channels and the
Hmm.
Manosphere channels, that they're because of what three men have allegedly have done. um
Like Floyd Wallace.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Floyd Wallace and all that. I just, you know, yeah, I find that very interesting. I saw you contacted me about it, and you want to know what's going on. So yeah, that's what's
Oh,
basically going on.
it might have been. I got contacted to write something about the manosphere, and I was like, well, I don't really focus on that anymore, so I don't. I don't know.
Right.
I have not kept up with what's going on. I'm like, I think the passport bros kind of like overshadow the manosphere now because. Well, one, they provide some solution, whether you agree or disagree with it. They provide some solution to what a lot of men want, but also I think they just their content is a little more. I guess if you want to live vicariously through somebody, their content is better to watch than somebody that's just live streaming and talking about random subjects. But and not TikTok. TikTok, of course, helped them blow up as well. I always attribute that to it more than anything else. To the point that a friend of mine from grad school who lives in Brazil is like, yeah, every time I go on social media, I keep seeing that stuff on my feed. I'm like, what is this?
Right, 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 right.
Mhm.
Queen Sunkiss, she asks, why should someone read this book?
Oh, that's a good question. Like your elevator pitch. I always tell people, like, hey, if you want to know why the FBI and local police departments and U.S. military intelligence spied on high school students, that answers in this book. But more importantly, when we think education now and then has always been a contentious issue, but when these debates come up, teenagers' voices and ideas are rarely considered. However, this book shows that during the 60s and 70s, they were taken seriously and became significant characters in debates about school reform. So you'll learn about not just the history of education, but also the history of the backlash to it and why police officers and security officers, armed and unarmed, were first placed into schools, which is actually originated from this time period that I discuss in the book.
Right. Oh, and speaking about this, right? What was any government agency, the FBI, and what was they face any litigation behind all this?
No, most people didn't know anything about government agencies spying on teenagers. I mean, the first report I've ever seen on it was a Washington Post article published in 1987 because a FOIA request was submitted by Norman Solomon, a guy I interviewed and met in person over the summer. And he found out that the FBI, along with school principals, spied on high school students in DC suburbs, Montgomery County, Maryland. But outside of that, nobody was submitting FOIA requests on high school students, and I was really one of like maybe the second, or the third person. But I did it much more expansively. But much of high school student activism was hyper local and very short lived. So a group like an underground newspaper in Lincoln, Nebraska, would have been very like only like a 1 to 2 months of surveillance. And most people, even people who worked on that publication, never would have suspected that they would have been spied on by the FBI.
Yeah, but if they went to Congress and contacted congressmen about this, and if so, what feedback did they attain?
Oh, you talking? Wait. Oh, you talking about the FOIA request?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
FBI. Oh, so when you submit a FOIA request, you actually send it to the FBI, which if something existed, they'll give you a file number, and then you forward that to the National Archives and Records Administration. And they can, depending on the length of the document, they can either give it to you immediately or they'll put it on a wait list that could take anywhere from 2 to 6 years. I think the longest I've waited, actually, I'm still waiting on documents that I requested 11 years ago. So it's a very time consuming process. But yeah, the documents I signed in this book, that was like a 2 to 6 or maybe 8 year wait for me to obtain
Wait.
those records.
Let me be nosy here. Let me be nosy,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
What requests were you trying to find?
Oh, I would submit FOIA requests on the names. You see the lists of in the back of the book. Every
Yeah,
name, every group in both those lists, I submitted a FOIA request on every single one.
and you couldn't. I'm talking about the ones that you still waiting for 11 years.
Oh yeah,
You're
they're
referring to.
well. One file is 2,000 pages, so they have different tiers. So if something falls under 500 pages, they'll put it in there like tier 3 or something. They put it in a particular tier where it'll take. They say 1 to 3 years, but I've always waited 2 to 8 years. And then if it's over 500 pages, they put in a different tier where it's boy, it might take 10 years to get. So it depends how long the file is.
Okay. Queen Sunk has asked, would this book be something you would recommend to a high school student?
Yes, I would, because the way I wrote the book, yes, it's published in an academic press. It's by the University of North Carolina Press. However, I tell character-driven narratives. So, in academic writing, there's a tendency to have an argument and you give like 3 dozen examples to uphold that argument. I decided just to tell 1 to 4 stories, no more than that, following relatable teenagers and their experience as activists, whether I'm talking about, student uprisings and civil rights or anti-war. So no, this is definitely something a high school student could read and would definitely understand. I wrote it mostly for the people who I interviewed in the book and their families because I knew they wanted to read it.
Okay. Is this your first book? How
Yes,
many
it
books you
is.
written?
Oh,
Oh,
just my first book. I've written academic articles and a bunch of like
oh, yeah.
online publications, but no, first book. I mean, I'm working on the second book.
Oh, and by the way, his online publications is in the description box because yes, I read your work on medium.com
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Anyway, go ahead and check out his publications on online magazines. It's in the description box, by the way. But so are you planning on writing a second book? And if so, what
Yeah,
will be the
it's
topic?
I already have I have like 5 chapters written already. So yeah, it's an offshoot of this. It's about teenagers in the Vietnam War, but not just the United States, but also focusing on Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. Now, I should say New Zealand and Australia are actually limited because if I had unlimited funds and times, yes, I would love to go there for a month each, but I don't. So they're only like
Oh, okay.
2 chapters maximum. But I've interviewed people from all 4 countries and have archival records from all 4 countries. I have not yet been to Australia or New Zealand, but I contacted people there. They gave me records they had in their personal possession. I've been to Canada 7 times, so I've done research there. The main point of that book I want to show people is that the Vietnam War was more global than we remember. I think most
Hmm.
Americans view it as a strictly American
American, yeah,
conflict,
right.
but there were troops. There was over 300,000 troops from South Korea, 60,000 from Australia. You also had troops from New Zealand and
South
Thailand.
Korea, yeah, Thailand. I think
Yeah,
Spain sent um a
some
regiment.
aid, or I can't remember. I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about. They were
yeah.
definitely involved too. And Canada, even though Canada doesn't send troops, there's volunteers, but more importantly, Canada sends the weapons of war. So the Canadian economy and the US are tightly bound after World War II. So during the Vietnam War, they sent over like $300 million of war materials to the United States, like copper, nickel, and like navigational system that planes used to guide and drop bombs. And the bombs they dropped used chemicals that were manufactured in Canadian industries, and even napalm, the substance of napalm that helps it stick, came from a Canadian company as well. So throughout the anti-war movement in Canada, they would always say, "End Canada's complicity." And I should say, not just the Vietnam War was global, but protests against it was global. You had sustained
Mm-hmm.
movements in Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and even Thailand, despite the fact that it was a military dictatorship. And you got solidarity protests in like West Germany, France, England. And whenever there were anti-war protests, they always would call for
Right.
international protests, not just national.
Right. Because like I'm more interested in Australians' involvement in
Mhm.
Vietnam because of the missing prime minister in 1966. He went swimming and he never surfaced.
Mhm.
Prime minister, I forgot his name now. The prime minister
Is it
of
Holyoke or I don't remember.
it starts with an H. His name started with H. Yeah, he been missing, and they never found his body.
Oh,
This
Harold
is like
Holt.
yeah, Heron Hope.
Harold
Yeah,
Holt.
Heron
Yeah.
Hope. Yeah, yeah. The prime minister of Australia. He was asked to send troops into Vietnam by President Johnson, and then I think what a year later they found they couldn't find his body.
Huh.
He was missing because he went swimming with what's one of his aides, and they couldn't find him.
Hmm.
So
No, I
that
don't.
that
Yeah,
that
I
was
don't
a
know the
whole
story behind
weird.
that, but
Yeah, that was a whole weird thing. You know what? I might want to do a video on that. I might
Mhm.
want to do a video on that. 'Cause that's a weird. You know what? I need to talk to somebody from Australia. Oh, there's somebody from Australia I know on my channel. He's a moderator on my channel. I
Okay.
might want to talk to him about that. Yeah, that's because that's a whole weird thing too, though. Back then, um, in Vietnam, Australian bombing Vietnam at the time. Yeah,
Yeah, they
that's a whole
participate from 66 to 71, and they have a
right,
draft.
right,
So I think
right.
somebody in the
Yeah.
comment section said that I didn't know some people who invaded the draft went to Canada, but Canada was making weapons. Yes. So Canada, and I
Hmm.
think for most Americans, they think Canada just being a refuge. They think of the place where war resistors, or more commonly known as like draft dodgers or military deserters, went for sanctuary. However, yeah, the country was indeed making the weapons of war, and they would send to the United States and would claim plausible deniability. They're like, well, we're not saying where how the weapons are used, but there's been some scholarship. I mean, people have been talking about this since the war, but I think many Canadians tended to either ignore it or downplay it. But there was a book that came out in 2021 that I have, The Devil's Trick: How Canada Fought in Vietnam, and it's a very accessible book to talk about the complex way that Canada was involved in Vietnam.
Yeah, and part of that is how Canada, uh, because if you go to Detroit,
Hmm.
if you go to Detroit and you go to Windsor, that's on the other side of
Yep,
Detroit. You cross
I
that
was there a
river,
few months ago.
right? It's the same company, Ford, Chrysler, GM. It's on both sides of the river. So when they were making tanks, they're making the tanks it's the same tanks. The tanks that was made up the material the military material that GM and them was making. All they had to do is cross the river. So there are plausible, they're trying to use the deniability of Canada's involvement in certain these wars. Kind of like what with the Iraq War. Like Canada had what's his name, Prime Minister what's it starts with a C. He's French Canadian.
Can't remember before Justin Trudeau. I can't remember the name of the.
Yeah,
I know
I
there's
can't
William
remember.
Harper. William Harper.
Yeah,
Then you get
the
Trudeau and
guy
McCarthy.
the guy before William Harper took over as Canada, the prime minister. He has a French last name. He was all doing like, well, I see. He was wagging his finger at George Bush, saying, you know, how dare you invade Iraq? Woo 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 woo. But come to find out, though, there are Canadian technicians in Iraq fixing on American um, machines, America tanks, American equipment,
Hmm.
and some of those came from Windsor, and other areas in Canada, because they knew who they much involved in it as we are. The
Yeah,
point
the
is they
first
wasn't the one doing the fighting though. That's the point.
The first line in the book that I mentioned, "The Devil's Trick," is that Canada has always been a warrior nation. In fact, even during the Israeli-Palestine conflict, some of the same countries that were condemning Israel still sent arms or weapons to Israel. So I mean, it's like, yeah, you tend to get that lie of geopolitics.
Yeah, like Canada. I always amazed by Canada, right?
Mhm.
Canada's involvement in the American Civil War. That's fascinating. Onto itself. They fought for the North, but yet Confederate sympathizers was sitting up in there in Toronto plotting and planning what to do and against the United States government. That it's all weird. It's weird. A lot of intrigue and stuff. I think there was a YouTube channel that talked about how Canada's involvement in the American Civil War. And you know what? I forgot that channel now. I ain't watched that channel in over a year. That was a great channel though.
Hmm.
I might have to find that channel and revisit it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's a whole lot of things Canada have done that that's not been told. Um, you know, out in the open for us
Uh,
Americans to
there's
consume.
reasons why. I mean, Americans don't know much about Canada. And I remember Paulo, I think a diplomat or somebody who appeared on television stations, he argued that he didn't think Americans really respect Canada. You watch South Park, they make fun of Canadians. So I think a lot of it is viewing it as not as culturally different from the United States. Although if you were to live there, you would notice some differences. I mean, yes, they
Yeah,
mostly,
yeah.
for the most part, speak English, but still they were a British Commonwealth. So, and not to mention, Canadian identity is all about not being like the United States.
Well, I think that people from Western Canada are more because West people from Western Canada you or came from the United States.
Yes, like
Particularly,
Alberta was mostly
yeah,
settled by
yeah.
Americans.
Right. And I don't know if you noticed that there is this massive secessionist movement in
Yes, yep,
Alberta. They're trying to
yep.
join the United States. Yeah. So most of those Albertians and people from South, what's the name? What's the Saskatchewan?
Oh, Saskatchewan.
Yeah. They're mostly Americans who just been there for what 80 plus years. They're not people who came from Britain and France for 300 years. These people are fresh Americans who escaped from the South and from the Civil War and stuff, or people who came from the North and then you know
Or like
moved,
farmland to
moved
get more
yeah,
farmland and stuff
farmland,
like that.
yeah,
Yep.
from the Midwest, yeah. That's it's cold. It's cold culturally different. If you go to Western Canada or that
Yeah,
plains part of Canada, they mostly on
I've
that.
been to Calgary actually. So
Oh,
I've been to Calgary. I've been to Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec City. So I got a good sense of the landscape.
yeah. I'm planning on going up there for the Royal. Um,
Mhm.
I'm making plans to go up there. The Royal. The Royal is the agricultural. It's kind of like the Houston Livestock Show down here in Texas, but
Hmm.
it's more like it's like a mixture of British and American Western type setup. I want to go there. It's in Toronto. It's on the first week of
Hmm.
no November. The first 2 weeks of November. Um, I'm planning on going up there. So yeah, I might. Yeah. So yeah. So if you don't see me in November making YouTube videos, I'm probably in Canada. So yeah. So yeah. But anyway, I think that's. Oh yeah, that's the name who I was referring to. Gene. I think that's his
I can't
name.
pronounce French,
George.
so yeah.
Yeah. I can't pronounce. Yeah. He's a French Canadian. He became prime minister of Canada at the time. Yeah. That's who I was referring to. But anyway, so you kind of retired from social media, I assume.
At least from YouTube, I don't like focus. It's like every now and then I'll try to survey the field to see if I can still remember people. But oftentimes I find that many of the people I used to document have left YouTube too. Like Little Big Nate, I don't know what happened to him. Or
Little bit Nate.
I was just
I,
wondering one day, like, what happened to that guy? And I'm like, he has been active in over a year, I think,
I
or
don't
two
know. I
years
think
maybe.
I think what happened to him. because of the rhetoric
Yeah, it
that
was
he was
really
spewing.
extreme.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, he was a train wreck. So I think he went to Rumble and he
Hmm.
disappeared. Uh, a Sidian can't. He tried to come back, but his time was short lived.
Hmm.
So he's no longer. He's back on Rumble, I believe.
Yeah, I've
And,
seen him
and
before. Yeah,
right,
and
and
then
now what they're doing with Dio Wolf, they're
mhm.
doing the Manosphere meetups. I don't know if you caught
No, I was
some.
still documenting it when they would meet up in person. Because like Bernard Riley, who also disappeared too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Most people did. Most of the leadership disappeared except for Anger Man
Yeah, I still see
and
him.
oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say his name. So, yeah, him and the master teacher, but I think those are the last two. Well, O'Shea as well, but I think those are the last three who are still here.
Mm,
Um, barring the legacy of Kevin Samuels.
mhm.
Uh, yeah, but other than that, those are the last three I see that's still. Um,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I think I will say I think Kevin Samuels will be remembered for maybe a few years until you get a generation who never heard of him and say who's that, because that's just how
y-
social media fame works. It's pretty
right,
ephemeral anyway.
right, right. So,
But yeah. Sometimes I just sometimes I just wonder. I always wondered like write something of like what people in the Black manosphere are doing now, because sometimes I get curious about what happened to Solo TV 84. He appears every now and then. I don't know what he does with crypto and stuff like that, or other obscure YouTubers I used to watch, like Game Changer or Xanatos Clutch, who now makes videos. Yeah, I don't know. Some people come in and out. Some they disappear permanently, and some will pop up randomly. It's like, oh, hey, look at here. But no, I
mhm.
am like,
Uh, uh,
I
have,
am done.
have you followed the Anton Daniels
Daniels,
and
I only
yeah,
see him because I follow sports content,
uh-huh.
so I see him appear there every now and then. Other than that, I don't. I already know his message. I don't really care to tune into him.
Okay, okay. Well. That's a whole other mess in on itself. I mean, I ain't gonna bore you with that. Lot of that. So anyway,
Okay.
yeah.
Or
So
like
yeah.
Nyla and Taz or Black Womanhood. I don't. Some obscure YouTubers. I don't know what happened to them.
Taz Nyla is still here.
Oh, okay.
Here. Yeah, it's still here.
I forget a lot of names of the channels, so that's why sometimes I'm like,
Yeah,
wait, what happened to like Black Womanhood or China White or what? I don't know. I'm just
yeah,
going off the top of my head of people I can
yeah,
remember.
yeah. Well, well. I guess this concludes our interview and our discussion. So yeah. So one last question though. What? So you said though you're working on a second book, right?
Hmm.
Uh, would you share what it may what's the topic?
Oh no, I just said that teenagers in the Vietnam War. That's the subject.
Oh, okay. So okay. That's right. I'm sorry. I need a So anyway, Aaron, I appreciate it. You know, Doctor Fountain. So
Woman Spear. See, it's been several years. I don't remember the names of a lot of people I used to tune into because I unsubscribed from everybody when I decided I was officially off, so I wouldn't come back
mhm,
any way or how. So I just knew over the years I would literally forget a lot of the names of the people.
right, right. Um, are you going to follow anything political, or are you going to
I
straight
mean, I've
stay?
been a news junkie since I was a kid, so I always been following politics.
Uh, all right, there. All right, y'all. I appreciate it. Doctor Fountain. I appreciate you coming by and dropping by
Oh,
and
thank you.
show me show me some love over here and everything. So how can people find you in your website, by the way?
Yeah, I have my personal website, which I always update, aaronfountainjr.com. That's where I put all my like works. I don't really link the manosphere stuff because I know it's even though I'm
Right,
documenting it, it can really if you're new to it, you just be like, oh my goodness, what is this? So I just tell people that I used to write
right,
about that. If you want to know more, just email me. But if you want to see any of my hear any of my interviews or read any of my writings or my academic scholarship or see where I'm speaking at in person, it's all on my website. And I'm active on Blue Sky as well. I don't really do Twitter anymore. It
Oh,
really went downhill when Elon Musk took over. So I do Blue Sky.
yeah. That's an armpit of hell.
Yeah, it's
Twitter,
so bad. I don't.
yeah. Twitter, man. I get depressed going on Twitter. You like
Mhm.
you just seen it's like somebody just opened hell, and you see all the demons coming out of the hole. It's just a hellscape. But yeah, Blue Sky is. Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky. I don't know if you noticed. I'm on Blue Sky.
Okay, I probably didn't
I
see.
should.
But
I think I added on Blue Sky. Um, I think I might. Well, I tell you what. If I find you and I add you, I'm gonna let you know it's me though.
okay, yeah, it's easy to find. It's
Right.
easy to find me.
Yeah, it's easier. Yeah. So anyway, um, so congratulations on your book, Aaron. I know
Mhm.
this might be hard work for you on that. Trying to find all the information and the details and stuff for that book. It must be a proud moment of you being nominated for this book. You know,
Oh yeah, well, finalist being nominated, finalist, two different things.
well, well, well. You are a finalist in what's it? The Los Angeles what's it called?
Los Angeles Times Book Prize.
Yeah, Los Angeles.
I
Yeah.
might share
Well,
something on my YouTube channel, even though I don't use it anymore. I just might say, "Oh, hey, look at the good news for the book."
yeah. Make him jealous, Aaron. Make him
Oh,
jealous.
I don't care about that. I just didn't like when self-published authors were talking about their book because I did read Obsidian's book. I sincerely
Oh,
sat down and read it, and I gave him my honest critiques of it.
wait a minute. Tell me more. I want to know more about these
I
critiques.
I made a video of it. Remember, I made this video on my page that's still up about the critique. It's in the book. It's a pretty lengthy book. The first 3 chapters are the only original information where he talks about like the black love machine, which he doesn't really identify what that means, and he talks about Derek Jackson and Ayana Van Zet and some other people. I don't remember. They're pretty obscure people. And then everything else is literally just copy and paste what used to exist on the Negro Manosphere website. So I read all those articles, and then I was just mostly I mean, I don't want to I didn't want to tear it down, but I'm just like, I was just confused if you said I'm going to write a book that's well researched, but you cite less than like 20 sources in the entire book. And then some of the more sources are not really credible, like Rollo Tomasi, the Rational Male. I'm like, okay, he's not even credible. Then again, it's better than Babatunde Umana, who literally put YouTube links in the book, which I'm like, you cannot be serious.
Yeah. But you talking about the Negro Wars book?
Yeah,
Yeah, that.
the whole
Yeah, like
SYSBM, which I don't know what they do now. I think they still do the same stuff.
yeah, they just I don't know what happened to him. I think SKC he disappeared, went on the rumble, so
Hmm.
he's not showing up anymore. But
No,
yeah,
Negro Wars is still active though. I troll
yeah,
them sometime on their blog just for fun. It's just hilarious.
and the reason why I asked you about Obsidian, I didn't know. I don't think Obsidian put out a third book or fourth book.
Oh no, I did not know that. He didn't normally he would email me stuff like that because I still have his email address, but maybe he just
Uh,
moved on. I don't really I don't know what he does. I don't know if he is he still in the same predicament that he was before.
yeah, but he more or less the same predicament. Yeah, he put out the book called Saint Kev, the Gospel of Saint Kevin
Not heard of
Samuels.
it.
Yeah. It looked like a blast. It's heresy. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it looked like the King James Bible, and he putting quotes of Kevin Samuels in it, and
Yeah, the
yeah.
interesting thing about Obsidian that I never told anybody. So when I made the video of critiquing his book, he went to a journalist who I interviewed, a journalist who did the Incel podcast,
Uh huh.
and asked her, was my critiques valid? Which he wasn't doing that because he just disagreed, but I think he felt very insecure because I think Obsidian, like some people in the Manosphere, not just him, I think he always strived to appear like a intellectual but doesn't have the credentials to proclaim as such, or really doesn't have the research skills to proclaim as such. So I think that's like an insecurity of his, which is a little shocking to me though. But he puts on this public bravado, this public front is very bravado, very macho, but he's kind of he has an insecurity though.
Yeah. But anyway, Aaron, Dr. Fountain, I appreciate you being here, some love and everything.
I appreciate it.
So anyway, this is going to conclude our interview. Check out his website is at AaronFountainJr.com. Yeah,
Yep.
.com, and you can find him over there, and check out his book and his publications. It's all in the description box of this live stream. So anyway, y'all be easy. I'm gonna get off of here on this Sunday afternoon, and I'll see y'all next time. I'm out. Aaron,
yeah,
I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. I'm leaving now. So
right.
Bye-bye.
All right then, bye-bye. Y'all have a good one, y'all. I'm out.
I am not here to debate with anyone. I have devoted all of my adult life to this subject. I only debate with my equals. All others I teach.